HOA Karen said that we couldn't walk our dogs through the neighborhood with 2 updates. Check out this video in podcast form by searching Austin Stories wherever you listen, or check the video description for a link. This took place in the eastern suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio today. My wife, 24, and I, 25, were walking our dogs, both 20 pounds or less, through the suburb beside our house. We've taken our dogs this way multiple times in our 2 years of living here. We prefer this area, as the street is usually dead due to it being a dead end, and we live on a busy 4-lane street. We didn't know it was an HOA. I guess the subdivision sign could have been a hint. And today we noticed an Audi lingering behind us, slowly just creeping up on us. We both stared at it from time to time to let the driver know that we saw them. As we got past the last house to exit the suburb and head back to our house, the car finally approached us. The driver, probably early 40s female, said, "Hi ladies, do you live around here?" We weren't sure what she was wanting or needing, so we said no. Well, we live 3 doors down from this street. She said, "Okay, well, you're in an HOA and some residents have been complaining about people leaving pet waste behind." At this moment, I made dead eye contact and I lifted those waste bags that I was holding in my hand to show her that we cleaned up our pet's waste. She said, "Well, this is private property, and since you don't live here, you can't walk your dogs here." She said there's a sign posted that says private property that we should have seen. We'd never heard of this before, but we made nice and said, "Okay, yeah, sure," and made sure that she didn't follow us home. We made a note to look for a sign, and all that was there was a sign that said no public parking. The driver literally reversed her way back, which I'm pretty sure was illegal. Now, our next door neighbor takes her 2 pugs down that street a few times a week too. There's no gate either. I've been looking online since I got home, and our city does not say anything about it being a private road. I'm tempted to call the city to ask about it, but I just want to make sure I'm not being a Karen. Update. I called the city this morning to inquire about the road. The person that I spoke to mentioned that she lives in a development that has private streets but doesn't believe it's posted. She said that her neighbors let non-resident dog walkers know that they're trespassing. I explained why we take that street, and she said as a dog owner, she understands. She said that she believes that since it's an HOA, the road is technically private, but she was not 100% sure, so she'd inquire further and call me back with an update. I mentioned how if it's not properly posted, they should expect multiple trespassers as they have not marked the street properly. I followed up with how the woman stalked us from her car the whole time, and the city hall worker was not happy to hear that in our favor. Update 2. The amount of digging that I did to find the submitted plans for the subdivision on the county recorder's website. Whoa. In the submitted expansion from 2011, the map that the HOA submitted labels the street private. Nothing on the county and city's website labels it private. Below, a Redditor asked me the street sign color, and per Google Maps, it looks to be white with green lettering as of September 22. In researching that meaning, the state of Virginia deems that private. Now this is actually in Ohio, and I couldn't find anything for the state of Ohio listing that meaning. Per the county's HOA laws, the HOA is responsible for the sign. Again, I'm on the side of, if they don't want non-residents back there, properly post or gate the entryway. But per the county's subdivision laws, they're supposed to have a sidewalk on both sides, and they just have it on one side. Just a fun little fact while reading. Now, also where the final cul-de-sac is, there's a sidewalk that connects to the dead end of another subdivision. This does not appear to be an HOA based on how some of the houses are kept, and there's no listing online. Say it with me here in the comments. Power tripping Karen does not want to have dogs on her road, so she takes the ownership, she owns the road. Whatever, man. What would you do? This is not even right. How an HOA destroyed my parents. So this happened almost 10 plus years ago, but has cemented my hatred for HOAs. My family is from Guam, a small Pacific island in U.S. territory where there isn't much, if any, HOAs. We moved stateside around 2001 and 2002 when my dad decided that he wanted to. My parents had good jobs and made good money and had decent credit. We lived in Tennessee for a while until we drove up to Indiana to visit some family. I guess my dad liked it so much that he decided to move there. Well, after my parents got transferred to their business's Indiana branch, a few months later, we moved there. Our house was very modest, but a bit more extra than most because it was a part of an HOA. A few months living there, my dad noticed a crack in the garage. It was a poor foundation, and notified our builder. The HOA was still being built, so he was easy to find. The builder said that he'd take a look. Come to find out that not only was the foundation poorly set, but the plot of land it was on was sinking, which is a screwed up thing number 1. My parents were told that, in order to fix it, it would cost more than their home loan because of the condition of the land it was on. The builder suggested that they pay him 25% cash of the home's value, and he'll build them a new house with their current mortgage cut down 25% as a good faith gesture. Screwed up thing number 2. As you're reading and listening to this, you're probably thinking, well, that can't be right. That's not legal. That's not how it works. Well, yeah, you're right, but being from a small island where you can trust someone at their word, it didn't occur to my parents to question it or get legal advice. Anyways, back to the story. So the new house is built, nicer than our previous home and not sinking. Life is good for a while until we had to go on an extended trip due to family emergency. Luckily, at this point, we'd been living there for years and my parents made some friends. We would have just left, but one of their friends let them know that they needed to inform the HOA that some lawn and garden standards wouldn't be kept due to the trip. Yes, my parents should have read the bylaws, but at first they were excited to own a home, so they never did. At the time of the emergency, they weren't thinking about anything but getting back to Guam. So my parents, still thinking that a face-to-face with the HOA board would be good enough, did just that. Told them during an HOA meeting, well, that's it. Well, our trip took a little while longer than expected. The whole summer and part of the first school year, but we finally got home. Waiting at our door were countless letters, warnings, fines, and more fines. Screwed up thing number 3. I don't exactly remember what was the total, but it really doesn't matter. My parents were broke. They spent their savings getting us to and from Guam and paying the mortgage, so yeah, no back fund. My parents went straight to the HOA for answers. Basically, it boiled down to, they didn't notify the HOA of the reason for the drop in standards, so they were well within their rights to post fines. And the worst part, put a lien on our home. My parents barely covered the mortgage and the trip to Guam. They tried reasoning with them until eventually they went to court. As you're guessing from the title, it didn't go well. The HOA board hung on to the fact that my parents didn't send an email and wait for board approval. They won. My parents were forced to pay the lien while also paying the mortgage. At first, my parents were optimistic, but it got to the point where it was pay the mortgage and fines or feed my brothers and I. They fell further behind and were starting to fight about it. It became too much for them, so they had to walk away from our home. My mom was devastated, and my dad felt like a failure. I was old enough to understand what was going on, but my brothers didn't know why we had to leave our home. The whole ordeal destroyed my parents' credit, wiped out their savings, and cost my parents their good job. Mom had a job in finance requiring good credit, and my dad had to work closer to home because of the financial situation. I don't think there's any way they can recover from what they walked away from, but they're not fighting and don't have to choose between paying rent and feeding my brother. The whole experience made me really hate HOAs. While I understand why they are needed, and in some cases make complete sense, I will never move my family into one if I can help it. Do you think the HOA should have shown grace? While they were technically within the rules, they definitely took advantage of them because, well, money, right? How would have you handled it? This HOA story has an update. My condo association experience has been interesting. 239 unit high-rise in Maryland that has major capital repairs underway. The building is 40 years old, and most residents are 60 plus and have lived here under a $300 a month condo fee up until 2015, basically free, not paying for, well, anything but the basic building bills. So now the fee is $640, and on January 1st will be $840. I found out that they're dumping $500,000 on HVAC units that are in the condos. There was an amendment that allowed them to do this in 2007 because it switched all of them over to Energy Star. This was good as a whole and legal because the building supplies electric, and electric had just been deregulated, not to mention tax credits. But nothing about the amendment replaced or overrides that the HVACs, PTACs, are owner's responsibility. It's listed specifically in a list of things that the owner is responsible for. Or the fact that bylaws state any repairs done in a unit by the association using common funds will be immediately assessed to the unit. So they just started replacing them again for free because the 2007 units can no longer be fixed. Oh yeah, they have been maintaining them the whole time. There is no PTAC made since 2009 that is not energy efficient, so there is no benefit to doing this. The building saved more than it spent on them in 2007 and 8. So as there is no longer a return on it, there is no basis of doing it, as now it is just an expense. They claimed they owned the units, which I never read or signed an agreement at closing stating of there being 3 common elements inside the 4 walls I purchased. Meanwhile, the one repair to the building is over $2 million, and they have automatic entrance doors, a fire pump, generator, and garage doors to go, at somewhere in the park of $400,000. So instead of stopping the illegal, according to the bylaws, free living insanity and having the ability to say money is earmarked for said repairs, they're choosing to continue what got the building here. 2 members of the board are related. After I called the HVACs out at a meeting, the president and a budget committee member resigned, and the board held a closed-door temporary appointment selecting another relative. 3 kin on a 7-member board. So here's the follow-up. To address the issue of the condo association replacing the PTAC's heating and cooling units like in hotels for free when our bylaws state 3 different ways that they're not to be doing it at the cost of $70,000 a year, the board had to schedule a meeting for after the general meeting. My guess is so that we don't discuss it in front of the other members. They said they had to consult with their lawyer that they were meeting with the following day for a different issue. We got an email later that day from the president stating that our reading of the bylaws was correct, but they are going to continue to do so at their discretion. Huh? The bylaws clearly state what common funds can be used for, and if they are used for any repair inside of a private unit, that unit is to be given 10 days notice of pending repair. And once the repair is made, the condo unit is assessed and payable immediately. This led to, at the next meeting, the board crying they had to pay legal fees because they're not lawyers and they were challenged on something. Here's where it gets fun. At the same private meeting, we had to address an issue with our downstairs neighbor who aggressively, like pounding on our door like you see like when the U.S. Marshal delivers warrants, said that we were hammering on our floor at 1 a.m. over 2 nights. I work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so yeah, that's not us. He has mental issues, a violent history, and has suffered a brain injury on top of it. What he's hearing is the elevator brakes from the elevator control room 4 floors above. The sound radiates through the concrete floors or the ceiling depending on where the lift cars are, making it sound in random places of the condo unit. Their solution was they want to inspect our unit to make sure it's 80% carpet, and we told them no. They said, well, how are we to make sure that you're in compliance? We told them in the state of Maryland you can only enter to investigate damage that threatens another unit or public safety, an emergency, or to get a limited common element to inspect, like a balcony or fire system. This is covered under Maryland 2018 Condo Act that they cite every meeting when talking about our reserve fund. Fast forward a week. We get a letter from their lawyer saying playing cat and mouse never ends well and we need to comply. So here we are with a long-sitting board that is cognitively on autopilot. Only 2 of the 7 are under 72 years old. A property manager that is to keep them away from breaking laws and civil rights, opening the COA to litigation, and an elderly real estate lawyer, 45 plus years practicing, that's never read the bylaws except for regulations for meetings and budget or the state law outside of mandatory budget requirements, a reserve study, and this is truly 3 blind mice. The pain is real. I hope they are dumb enough to file at this point. From all the communications, on paper at that, I swear they think it's 1995. The law was fast and loose back then. The lawyer may be a real estate lawyer, which is effective for foreclosing a lien, but he's not an HOA lawyer in the least. This witch of an HOA Karen is the worst I've seen. I, 34 male, and my wife, 31 female, have 2 kids, 3 and 1. We liked most of our neighbors, except Karen. She was always jealous and hateful to us, and it all came to a head with a huge surprise for us. So we live in a beautiful cul-de-sac where my family and I just moved into an amazing house with a huge backyard for the kids and to mow. We were thrilled to have such a large outdoor space, and I couldn't wait to turn it into a lush garden paradise, even though my gardening skills actually blow. The best part was that we actually got into a great neighborhood without being in their stupid HOA. Karen, however, lived right next door to us and was always keenly aware of every detail in our lives. It didn't take her long to notice that we weren't using a large part of our yard. While we did maintain it with a neatly trimmed lawn and occasional picnics, we had no immediate plans to build a garage or a shed on the unused portion. This, my friends, was the perfect storm for Karen's jealousy. You see, Karen had a small lawn of her own, barely big enough for a picnic blanket or 2, and she could not stand the idea that we had this vast unutilized space. So she hatched a scheme to take matters into her own hands while we were on vacation for 2 weeks. So we locked up our house and said, "See you later," to our lovely neighborhood, and had no idea of the impending chaos that was HOA Karen greeting us upon our return. 2 weeks later, we returned home. The minute we pulled into our driveway, our jaws dropped to the ground. There stood a massive in-ground swimming pool, complete with a little diving board and slide on the side too. What in the world? I tried to control my outburst in front of my kids, but man, it's so hard to do sometimes, especially in a time like this and against a woman like her. We most certainly had not ordered a pool, nor did we have any plans to do so. As we approached, we found a letter wedged in our front door. I picked it up and my hands were shaking as I read it. It was a construction permit from the city, issued to none other than HOA Karen, allowing her to build a pool on our property. Insane. We could not believe our eyes. Karen, that dumb neighbor, had taken advantage of our vacation to construct a pool right in our own backyard. We scrambled inside with rage and began searching the house for any clues. Our first thought was that perhaps it was a well-intentioned surprise from like a close friend or a family member. But as we investigated further, we found the truth. So we were out of options, and we're just still trying to wrap our heads around this ridiculous situation, and we decided to check our home security cameras. We scrolled through the footage, and that's when we hit the jackpot, baby. There, in all of her glory, was Karen herself, supervising the construction crew as they installed the pool, all while smirking like that she thought she owned the place. We couldn't believe our luck, or should I say, her bad judgment. With evidence in hand, we took the next logical step. We contacted the HOA president and our lawyer. The conversation was nothing short of a roller coaster. The HOA president was as shocked as we were. He assured us that Karen had never received any approval for such a project, even from the HOA. We never got along with the idea of an HOA, and we weren't subjected to their regulations or fees, so where did all this crap come from? Our lawyer, on the other hand, was quite amused by the case, seeing it as an opportunity to give Karen a taste of her own medicine. With the evidence from our security cameras and construction permit, we had a strong case against her. He suggested that we gather estimates for the removal of the pool and any potential damage that it had caused on our property, and that we should also keep a record of any other related expenses. So then we submitted the evidence to the HOA president, who promptly called an emergency meeting with the association board. It didn't take long for them to come to a unanimous decision. Karen was in deep trouble, almost as deep as the pool that she thought she could get away with. HOA president paid us a visit to inform us of their decision. Karen was fined a substantial amount for her unauthorized construction project, which would help cover the cost of removing the pool. Additionally, she was ordered to compensate us for any damage that her pool had caused to our property. It was a sweet victory for us and a bitter pill for Karen to swallow. With the legal process started, we embarked on the tough task of removing the pool. The construction crew, who didn't realize they were accomplices in Karen's idiotic plan, arrived and began the process of dismantling what was now a giant eyesore in our backyard. We watched with a mixture of satisfaction and relief as the once beautiful monstrosity came crashing down piece by piece. HOA Karen's little project had cost her dearly, not just in terms of the fines and the money that she had to pay us, but also in her reputation. Her attempt to seize our property had backfired awesomely. At least she knows not to try and pull that crap again. Karen hits me with her car, covers up the crime, so I put a lien on her house. Click the video on your screen to find out why and what happened, and I'll see you there.